Single father let an Apache widow stay for one night, unaware she was a fugitive running from her own people. The latch on the smokehouse door was broken again. I noticed it the same way I noticed everything wrong on that ranch, which was to say, too late and with my hands already full of something else. I had a hen under one arm, a cracked yoke bucket in my free hand, and my youngest, Cora, following me through the mud asking if she could name the new colt. She was 6. She wanted to name everything. I told her the colt didn't need a name, it needed shoeing, and she told me that was the saddest thing she'd ever heard. Which made me laugh, and the hen took that moment to scratch the living hell out of my forearm and go free. That was November, that was my life. 16 months since Clara had died of the fever. 16 months of doing it wrong every day in ways I hadn't even known were possible before she went. The girls, Cora and me, who was 9, they were all right, better than all right. Me had her mother's cool head and Cora had enough life in her for 3 children, but the ranch was fraying. Little things mostly. The broken latch. The north fence I kept meaning to ride out and check. A water trough with a slow seep I'd packed with clay twice, and it kept opening up again. Everything holding on by just enough. I had 2 hands and 1 brain, and there was always more than that needed. The night she came, I'd already put the girls to bed. Me had lit the lamp low like she always did. She'd started doing that after her mother died, keeping a light going, and I was at the table with the ranch ledger trying to make the numbers say something they didn't want to say. Wind off the mesa, hard and dry. November does that out here, takes everything that isn't nailed down. I heard the horse first. Not the horse stopping, the way a horse moves when its rider has lost the reins. Stumbling slow, the wrong gait. I had my coat and the rifle before I was fully standing up, which tells you something about how you learn to move when you're alone out on the flats. I went to the door, not through it, looked through the side window first. She was on the horse, but she wasn't riding it. She was holding the saddle horn with one hand and leaning so far to the left that I didn't understand why she hadn't gone off. The horse had stopped at my water trough, that slow-seeping trough, and was drinking like it had been dry for 2 days. I went out. She heard me coming and straightened. I couldn't see her face under the hat brim, but I could see the rifle come up, the barrel leveled at my chest, the hand on it steady enough. I stopped, held the lantern out to the side where it wasn't behind me. Water, she said, that was all. Horse is already taking it, I said. She lowered the rifle. And then she went off the horse, not a fall, more of a controlled slide. And she caught the stirrup and held herself up for a moment, and then her legs went, and she sat down hard in the mud beside my trough. I stood there for a second. Then I went and took the horse's reins before it spooked. She was Apache. I knew that much from the blanket work on her saddle and the cut of her clothes. Late 20s maybe, a bruise along the left side of her jaw that was fresh enough to still be swelling. 2 fingers of her right hand had been wrapped with a strip of wool, the kind of quick wrap a person does for themselves, no mirror. She was watching me the whole time I was looking. I need to water the horse and go, she said. Horse needs more than water. It's been ridden hard. How would you know? Because I know horses, and you've got a busted cinch on that saddle, the left strap. It's been like that a while. She turned and looked, didn't say anything. You can sleep in the barn, I said, both of you. I'm not sleeping. I didn't ask what you were planning, I said you can sleep in the barn. I took the horse to the rail and tied it. Come in and get warm first, I've got coffee on. She didn't move. There are children in that house, I said. I'm not going to do anything with you watching the door with a rifle. That seemed to settle something for her. She stood up slow, one hand on the trough edge, and she came inside. I didn't ask her name that night. She didn't give it. She sat at the far end of the table from the ledger and drank the coffee with both hands around the cup and didn't say anything for a long time. I worked on the cinch strap I'd taken off her saddle. It wasn't beyond fixing. And after a while she watched me doing that, and I felt her loosen slightly. The way you loosen when someone does an ordinary thing in front of you. One night, she said, "All right. I'm gone before the girls wake up." I nodded. She looked at the low lamp down the hall. "Me's lamp, your wife. She's gone." She didn't say she was sorry. I appreciated that. She just nodded once, the way you nod when information comes in that changes the shape of a room. "Mine too," she said, "2 seasons back." We sat there with that for a minute. "Nara," she said. "Callum," I said, "Cal." She finished the coffee and I showed her the barn. I gave her the good horse blanket, the wool one, not the burlap, and she looked at it for a second before she took it. I left the lantern. I went back inside. I didn't sleep much. I was up before the light in the barn by 4:30. She was already up, had the horse watered again, and was cinching the repaired strap. The bruise on her jaw was purple now, fully come in. "Who hit you?" I said. She pulled the cinch tight. "No one you know." "I know more people out here than you might think." She stopped and looked at me then, really looked at me, and I could see her deciding something. "My husband's brother," she said. "He wants what my husband left, our horses. The grazing rights on the southern flat, we filed on those. There's a paper on them." She went back to the cinch. "His name is Degas. He has 3 men with him. And they're behind you. Maybe half a day." I thought about that. I thought about Cora in there asleep under her quilt and me's low lamp, and the fact that there were 4 men maybe half a day back on a trail that led here. "You can't outrun them on that horse," I said. "I know. So what's your plan?" She didn't answer. I picked up the water bucket and went to fill the trough, just to be doing something. And I thought about the north fence I still hadn't checked, and the ledger numbers that didn't add up in the 16 months since Clara, and all the things I'd done wrong, and kept doing wrong because I was one man with 2 hands. Then I set the bucket down. "Put the horse in the back stall," I said. "Cover it with the barn canvas if you can get it to stand still. Don't unsaddle it yet." She looked at me. "I'm not telling you what to do," I said. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can leave if you want, but if you stay, I'm going to need to know where you are." She stood very still, then she led the horse to the back stall. I woke me up first. I told her something had come up and I needed her to keep Cora inside and to do it without making a fuss and without asking questions until I came back. Me was 9, but she had that cool head, and she looked at me for 1 second and said, "Okay, Papa." That was it. I kissed the top of her head and went back out. Nara was in the barn. I handed her the extra rifle, the old Winchester, not my good one, and she checked the load without being asked, smooth and practiced. "You know how to use that," I said. "My husband taught me." "All right." We waited. The 4 men came at noon. They came from the south like I figured they would, following the trail she'd left in the soft ground. 4 horses, 4 men, and Degas up front. I could tell him by the way he rode, the kind of man who's used to going first because he decides everyone else can follow. He was maybe 40, big through the shoulders. He had a rifle across his lap. They stopped at the yard edge. I was on the porch. I didn't have my rifle out. I had my work gloves on and a coil of fence wire in my hand, which was deliberate. "Morning," I said. Degas looked at the ranch. "I'm looking for a woman," he said. His English was accented but clean, practiced. "Most men are," I said. One of the men behind him laughed. Degas didn't. "Apache woman, rides a gray horse. She came through here." "I get a lot of travelers through here," I said. "It's a main route. Can't say I've kept track." He looked at the barn. "Held on it. You mind if we look around?" "I mind," I said. He looked back at me. That was the moment, I could feel it, that particular kind of silence where a man is deciding what he's dealing with. I held his look and didn't blink and didn't shift my weight and didn't move the coil of fence wire. I was the most boring man he'd ever seen. Just a rancher with a coil of wire looking at him. "That's my land," I said. "My house, my barn, my water. You're welcome to water your horses and move on. That's what I offer. She has property that belongs to our family. Then you file that with the land office in Tucson and they'll look into it. That's what the land office is for." His jaw tightened. He looked at the barn again. "I've got daughters in that house," I said. "I'd appreciate you moving on." The word daughters, I watched it land. Even in men like Degas, there's something that flinches at that word when it comes from a father's mouth, quiet and flat. It's not sentiment. It's the understanding that a man with daughters in a house will not be moved by anything short of dying. He sat there another moment. Then he reined his horse around. "If she's in there," he said, not to me, just to the air, "she'll come out eventually." They rode east, not south, not back the way they came. East, which told me they were going to make a wide circle and come back. I went to the barn. Nara was in the shadows at the back stall, the Winchester at her side. She'd heard everything. "They're circling," I said. "Yes. I know a man in the county, a deputy, name of Holt. He's 2 hours south. If I ride now, I can get him and be back before sundown." I thought for a second. "He'll want to see that paper you mentioned, the grazing rights." She reached into the inside of her jacket and handed me a folded paper. I opened it. It was a properly filed deed, stamped and dated. The grazing rights to the southern flat made out to Nara and her husband, Eli Runningwaiter. "Eli," I said. "He was a good man," she said. I folded it back and put it in my coat pocket. "I'll take care of it." She looked at me. Not like she was doubting me, more like she was trying to understand what kind of man makes a statement like that about something that isn't his business, isn't his land, isn't his fight. "Why?" she said. I thought about saying something complicated. It wasn't that complicated. "Because it's right," I said, "and because you needed somewhere to land and this was where you landed. That's enough." She didn't say anything. "Me will watch Cora. You watch me. Don't open the door for anyone but me." I rode. Holt was where I figured he'd be, which was eating his noon meal at the way station south of the Rio Cut. He was a practical man, Holt, not given to drama, which I valued. I laid it out for him straight. He read the deed, asked 3 questions, and we were riding back within 20 minutes. We found Degas' men camped at the edge of my north tree line, like I'd figured, waiting for dark. Holt rode in with his badge showing and his deputy's manner, which in a man that size is a significant thing, and he told Degas plainly that the deed was legal and registered, and that the woman had the right of her property, and that any further harassment was a matter for the federal court and would be treated as such. Degas' face did what faces do when they've lost. They rode out. I watched them go until I couldn't see the dust anymore. Then I rode back to my yard and unsaddled my horse myself, which took longer than it should have because my hands were shaking slightly, and I didn't want to walk into the house like that. I stood at the water trough for a minute. The door opened. Cora came out first, because Cora always comes out first, and she ran across the yard and hit me in the midsection with her full weight, which is something a 6-year-old can do more effectively than you'd think. Me came behind her, slower, measuring me the way she always did when I came back from something uncertain. "You're all right," Me said, not a question. "I'm all right," I said. Nara was in the doorway. She had both girls' winter coats laid over her arm, which meant she'd been about to bring them back inside. She looked at me across the yard with the same look as earlier, the one where she was trying to figure out what kind of man I was. This time, there was something different in it. We ate dinner that night, all 4 of us, the first time I'd had someone else in that chair across from me since Clara. Nara made a corn mash with the dried chilies she had in her saddlebag, something I'd never had before, The smell of it came up sharp and warm in that small kitchen, and Cora kept leaning over her bowl to smell it before eating it. Me talked more than she'd talked in weeks. I watched that happen and I didn't say much. I just ate and listened and let it be what it was. After the girls were in bed, Nara cleaned up without asking. I tried to say she didn't have to, and she just continued doing it, so I dried. "The south flat," I said, "where your grazing rights are, is there water on it?" "Good water," she said, "a spring. My husband found it. I've been losing the water on my north pasture. The trough keeps seeping." "What did you pack it with?" "Clay." She shook her head. "Stone and clay both. Pack the stone first, then work the clay into it while it's wet. It sets different." "I didn't know that." "Most people don't." We were quiet for a minute. "Your girls," she said, "they need a woman around." "I know it. And this place," she looked around the kitchen, not unkindly, "it needs 2 pairs of hands." "I know that too." She handed me a plate to dry. "I have nowhere to go back to," she said. "Degas will try again eventually. Not now, not with the deputy knowing, not with the deed filed, but eventually." "Probably," I said. "My husband's horses are south, 6 of them, good stock. They're being kept by a family I trust, but they won't keep them forever." "We could bring them up," I said. She looked at me. "The grazing flat has good grass?" I asked. "Good grass, good water." "Then it's a proper pasture, not just a deed." I set the dried plate down. "That's something, that's a real thing." She held the next plate a moment before handing it over. "One night," she said. "That was last night," I said. She almost smiled. It wasn't quite a smile, more of a thing happening in the corners of her mouth, but I saw it, and it landed somewhere I hadn't expected. "I'll fix the trough tomorrow," she said. "Stone first, then clay." "While it's wet." "All right." I hung the dish towel on the hook, and she blew out the kitchen lamp, and we stood there for a second in the dark before we moved to different parts of the house. There are things I can tell you about the months after that, and things I won't. What I can tell you is the ranch stopped fraying. The trough held. The north fence got checked and 2 posts replaced, and the wire tightened, and that was a whole afternoon's work we did together on a cold day in December. The 2 of us, and me handing wire and Cora keeping track of the post count in the way only a 6-year-old keeps track of things, which is wrong but enthusiastic. We brought the horses up in February, 6 of them, all good stock, and she knew every one of them by name and by habit, and the way she moved with them told me things about who she was and who her husband must have been. In the spring, I had more hands than I'd had in 3 years. In the spring, the ledger numbers started saying what I needed them to say. I won't tell you it was simple. It wasn't. She was still carrying something I didn't fully understand and wasn't going to push on, and there were nights I'd hear her moving around in the kitchen at an hour when nothing needed doing, and I'd stay in my room because I understood something about needing to be alone inside a hard thing. And she understood the same about me, which was a particular kind of knowing that you can't talk yourself into. Either a person has it or they don't. What I'll tell you is this. It was late summer, a Thursday, nothing particular about it. I'd been mending bridles at the bench by the barn, and she came out with water, the way she did sometimes in the afternoon, and she set it down, and she looked at what I was doing, and she said, "You're holding the all wrong like this." And she put her hand over mine to show me the grip, and she left it there a moment longer than necessary, and I felt her looking at the side of my face. "Cal," she said. I looked at her. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. It was all there in the way she said that one word, my name, just my name, with something in it I hadn't heard directed at me in a year and a half, like I was someone worth saying. I turned my hand over under hers. That was all. We just stood there at the workbench in the late August heat with my hand turned over in hers, and the horses moving in the south pasture, and somewhere in the house Cora naming something again. That's the thing about being needed. Really needed, not because there's no one else, but because someone who could leave, who has her own horses and her own deed and her own considerable will, looks at what you are and decides to stay. Decides it clearly. That's a different thing from being needed out of desperation. That's a gift. That's a freely given thing. I'd been running on empty for a long time, holding it together by will and stubbornness, and not wanting the girls to see me come apart. And somewhere in the doing of it, the trough and the fence and the horses and the ledger, I'd stopped being a man who was surviving and started being a man who was building something again. She saw that. She was part of making it, and she saw it. I don't know what you'd call what we were by then. I know what Cora called it, because Cora called things what they were, which was the best thing about her and the most embarrassing. She told the preacher's wife in town that her mama was teaching her to ride bareback. She said it like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. It was. I keep a piece of that repaired cinch strap on the post by the barn door. I don't know why I kept it. I just did. It's cracked and dried out now, and it's not good for anything, but I know what it is. It's the thing that was broken, that I fixed, that brought her here. The small, ordinary hinge on which everything else turned. Outside right now the horses are moving on the south flat. 6 of them, plus the 3 I put in last spring. Nara is somewhere in the east pasture. I can see the hat, small, moving against the mesa color. Me is 17 and the spitting image of her mother in the cheekbones, which still pulls something sideways in my chest when the light catches it right, but it doesn't break anything anymore. And Cora named the colt. Of course she did. She named it Cinch. I didn't argue.